Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode here on my channel. My name is Kim Keen. I am a life coach and holistic healer. And today I want to talk to you about the 7 stages that you will experience during your healing journey. Now, they're not going to go in this order, and sometimes a stage might circle back. And so I wish I was prepared to feel all of these stages in my journey, but I have to say I wasn't. I was expecting it to be 3 easy steps. And I think a lot of people expect that, like, oh, it'll be easy, no problem, 3 simple steps, and then I will be healed. I will not have to carry around this burden any longer, and I'll actually feel happy again. And so when I first started my healing journey, I was in shock because the journey hadn't started the way that I was expecting it to. I went to therapy thinking she was going to say, yes, Kim, you're having an identity crisis. No problem. 3 easy steps. Here you go. Bada bing, bada bang, boom, you're done. And on you go. And so that was actually not even remotely close to how the journey started. So it was really all about unhealed childhood trauma that was bubbling under the surface for years. And I was really unaware of the fact that that was what was happening. So I left my teaching career in 2014 and I was absolutely miserable. I was burnt out. I was literally fried to a crisp because I was not expecting being a classroom teacher in a kindergarten setting to be the way that it was. So I did not know the extent of how much politics influences the classroom. So I was trying to manage district politics and funding and testing and things like that. And then I was also trying to take care of kiddos who were really underserved within their community in school and outside of school. And the resources were really lacking. So I was trying to compensate for that by doing a lot of work on the weekends and missing out on time with my husband and my 2 young girls. And it was just more than I could handle. So I was always on high alert. I was in this very emotionally triggered state all day. And then I would come home and that would continue. And I was just miserable, absolutely miserable. So it got to the point where my husband said, that's it, Kim, you cannot go back. You're done. You are putting in your notice and you're going to have to find something else to do because no one wants to be around you. And that was devastating to me. And so that was June of 2014. And in that time, my girls were home with me. They were little. They were 5 and 2, and I was really struggling to adjust to being a stay-at-home mom because that wasn't the vision I had for myself. I had this vision of me being a kindergarten teacher and my kids would be home with me in the summer, but during the school year they would be daycare kids. And so to leave that and come home, though literally the 4 walls started to feel like they were closing in on me. And so I was having a really hard time adjusting and coping to that. And I started to have really unhealthy thoughts about myself. I felt like I should just end my life because everyone would be better off without me since I was still unhappy and miserable and not doing a great job of being a wife or a mom. Or I thought, well, maybe instead of that, that's really, tragic. And I don't know if I could actually even do that. Maybe I'll just run away instead and I'll just disappear and then my husband and my girls can start over without me. But that was also really an awful thing because I knew I would miss them. But more importantly, I did not want that to be their legacy of me as their mom because I knew that that would impact them deeply as they got older. So I thought, okay, well, those 2 things are not really the options that I want. I know that they're not the right choices to make. So let me go to therapy and start talking to a therapist and get a handle on this. And so that was where I went and I thought she was gonna be like, yes, absolutely, Kim, identity crisis, no problem. We're gonna fix this. And so it was very quickly that that whole concept was knocked out of me and I had a huge wake-up call, which was just, like I said, shocking because it wasn't what I was expected. And very quickly she started throwing labels at me, and the labels were shocking too, like codependency. What? I've never heard of that word. Anxiety. I didn't think that I was anxious. And then the biggest one was childhood emotional neglect. So each time she gave me a label, I felt shocked all over again. Like, hold on, there's 1 label, now there's 2, now there's 3. Are you kidding me? How could this keep happening? And then that led to anger. I was so angry, like burning red hot anger. I felt it for my parents because I felt like, how in the world could you do this to me? Like, your child, your flesh and blood. How could you come into a marriage with dysfunction and still decide to create me and bring me into this world and then not be able to work through your shit and get a divorce when I was not even 4 years old? Like, how does that even work? Like, shame on you. And then I also felt not only anger to my parents, but I felt it towards the generations before. Now, my grandmother and I, my dad's mom, we are super close, super, super close. When I was in the abusive relationship with my high school boyfriend, she was one of the very few family members who actually stood by me and still loved me unconditionally. But I started to feel this anger towards her because I thought, you being raised by two alcoholic parents, you were codependent, and then you passed that on to my dad, and now that dad, my dad passed it on to me. But I also started to feel that anger towards my mom's parents, who I didn't even know, because my mom was actually taken from her parents by the state when she was 10 and put in foster care. So I felt anger towards them. And then I felt anger towards their parents and their grandparents and all of these generations previously, because this shit had been passed down. And at what point were we going to say enough was enough? So I just started feeling so angry towards everyone and anything. I felt angry towards people who I thought were normal, with no dysfunction, no trauma, nothing to work through. I started feeling that towards my husband because he wasn't showing up for me the way that I wanted him or needed him to, even though I couldn't really articulate exactly what he needed to do for me. But I also felt a little angry, like he grew up in an existence vastly different from mine. So like, no generational trauma, no childhood trauma. And that kind of made me feel angry too. Like, well, that's not fair. But that was beyond his control and beyond mine as well. And I just had this feeling of like, how could these people do this? How could my family, not just my immediate family, but my extended family and generations before, how could they do this? Why didn't they stop it? I just could not wrap my brain around it. And then from anger, I had this really deep pain. And I just felt like my existence should have been enough for my parents to make the changes that were necessary to stop the cycle of generational trauma, to prevent the childhood trauma that I was going to experience from their divorce and their remarriages, and then which led me to an abusive relationship with my high school boyfriend. So I just felt like there were so many things that should have been able to happen on their behalf to make things better for me. And then I felt this deep sadness and pain because I missed out on things. I missed out on experiences in high school because I was in the abusive relationship. I missed out on things in college because I didn't go to college right away because of that abusive high school relationship. And then I missed out on things with my younger siblings because my dad didn't speak to me for 5.5 years when I was, from the time I was 15 until I was 21. So I missed out on time with my brothers from my dad and my stepmom, who are 13 and 16 years younger than I am. And then my mom has a son who's 6 years younger than me. And I didn't really have a great relationship with him either, because my relationship with my mom was strained. So I just felt so much sadness for all the things that I had missed out on. But then I felt pain too, because I felt like I wasn't being the mom or the wife that I knew I could be and wanted to be. And that really wasn't fair to my husband and my girls. So I just had this heart-wrenching pain. And from there went hopelessness, because I had been in therapy for 2.5 years. And in this time, I would, make a little progress. Okay, I'm codependent. And I did all of this work and learning and everything around codependency. And then it was like, okay, I got my land legs wrapped around codependency. I finally feel like I'm stable on my feet again. And then the sails would be knocked out of me, out of my ship. And it would be this really turbulent ride, because then it was another label. It was anxiety. And I finally felt like I got that under control. And then it was childhood emotional neglect. And then it was, all of this inner child work and this pressure to take medication and all of these different aspects. And I just felt like I was never really moving the needle much. I just felt so depressed because I felt like I would never heal and things would always feel fucked up. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. And I just wanted so desperately for some things to change. And then from there, I went into a state of mourning, because I was mourning what I felt like I didn't have in my current life as an adult: coping skills, healthy relationships with my husband, my children, myself. And I felt like I lost time and I felt like I was missing out on things as I was growing up as a kid. I didn't get to do gymnastics or dance or horseback riding. I wasn't allowed to go to a lot of friends' houses and spend the night. because my dad was very selective of who I could go hang out with and how often. And I had to be in when I was 16 with the streetlights on and all those kind of things. So I just felt like I had missed out on a lot. And I felt like I was missing out on time with my daughters because I was trying to unravel all of this unhealed childhood trauma and the trauma of domestic violence and being blindsided by all of that. So I just felt like there was so much that I had missed out on and so many lost opportunities. And then also, I was mourning what I missed in high school and college. I didn't get to do study abroads. I didn't get the traditional college experience of living in a dorm because I didn't start college until I was 21. And when, most of my friends were in their junior year. And then my husband and I, when we did move up to New Hampshire for him to work on his master's, I was still working on my undergrad and I was a commuter student. So I still, like, there were just so many things that, like, I felt like I had lost and missed out on. And I was really trying to I was really grieving that and trying to come to terms with that. But then there came this point of acceptance where I understood that my parents were doing the best that they could with the tools and understanding that they had in their lives, and that what they were doing wasn't intentional. They didn't set out to traumatize me. They didn't set out to get a divorce. They went into their marriage thinking that they were going to have a long-lasting marriage. And it was both of their traumas, but a lot of my mom's unhealed trauma from her abusive childhood that was filled with neglect and dysfunction that caused their marriage to crumble and fall apart. And that had nothing to do with me. So there was a lot of acceptance there that I actually wasn't broken. I wasn't flawed. I was really just out of alignment. And that acceptance, a lot of that acceptance didn't come until I started doing life coaching. So I had some acceptance from therapy, but a lot of acceptance didn't come until much later in the journey, like 3 years in, when I started working with a life coach. And so when I came to accept all of those things and the many aspects of my healing journey and the life experience that I had, then I could get to a point where I could actually start reconnecting with myself. I had to learn who was Kim as a person, not just as a wife or a mom or an elementary school teacher or a college instructor, but who was I as a person? What did I like? What didn't I like? How did I want to spend my time? How did I want to you know, dress? What did I want to eat? All of those things. What interests did I want to have? What hobbies did I want to have? What kind of books did I want to read? And so part of that reconnection journey, one of the first things I did was actually started taking horseback riding lessons because that was something that I wasn't allowed to do as a child. And I really desperately wanted to do it. And I just love horses. There's something about looking in a horse's eye, I feel like you can just see into their soul. They're just beautiful, majestic animals. And I just love being around them. So I gave myself that opportunity. The other thing, and this probably sounds really silly, was I got a pair of ripped up jeans because I wanted ripped up jeans so badly, but was never allowed to have them. And putting them on and wearing them in public, initially I thought, oh my God, people are staring at me. I must look so stupid, but no one was looking at me. No one even blinked an eye at the fact that I had ripped up jeans. So I had to figure out these things for myself and reconnect with myself and really fall in love with myself again, because I felt like, well, first of all, I didn't love myself. I hated a lot about me and about the things that I had experienced. And so I really had to get to a place where I could actually love myself again. And part of that meant that I had to set boundaries in order to be able to reconnect with myself on what I would accept from others and how much time I would spend with them. Would I answer their phone calls or their texts right away? What would I share with them? How much, how little? All sorts of things. And so then I was able to reconnect with my husband and my daughters too, because there was a point in time where our relationship felt really strained, my husband and I, because I had closed myself off and put myself in almost like a cocoon to heal. So intimacy was a struggle, communication was a struggle. I just felt like I felt very disconnected from him, and I'm sure he felt disconnected to me because I really had sort of shut myself off from the world as a protection method because I felt so fragile and wounded, but also because I needed to close off to and compartmentalize to be able to work through all the things that were being thrown at me left and right. But then I was also able to reconnect with my daughters as well, because as I started to heal, I was able to let my hair down a little bit. I wasn't wrapped so tightly, and I was able to let go of things. I could recognize, like, okay, Kim, that's not something that you need to worry about, because in 5 days, in 5 weeks, in 5 years, it's not going to matter. You can let go a little bit and you can actually have fun and be your silly self, and no one's going to judge you for that. And so I also, that kind of came into play with inner child work, because my girls were little, very close in age to the age that I was when my parents divorced. So I kind of was able to tap into inner child healing and parenting them at the same time, which was really convenient, even though it was very stressful and traumatizing, not only for me, and I'm sure for them, because now my daughters are 12 and almost 15, and they'll say things to me about how I was as a mom when they were little. Oh, you were angry, or you yelled a lot, or you did this, or you did that. And I feel horrible because I never wanted to traumatize them. But I can say now that I really did break the cycle, because I did the healing work. I went through all of these phases and I worked through each phase. And they now can recognize the difference between the mom I was before the healing journey and the mom I am after the healing journey. And not just the mom, but the wife and the person too, because I really have transformed in many ways. And it's because I went through the healing journey. And these aren't the steps that just I've gone through. My clients go through these steps as well, because these, I'll say, are universal steps that most people experience on their healing journey. And like I said at the beginning, they're not always going to go in that order. Sometimes you might have, um, you know, you've mourned an aspect of your journey, and then you feel angry again, and then you feel hopeless again, and then there's a pain there. So it's not always a linear straight path. It can be all over the place, and things can circle back, and maybe you might skip a step. So it's really not a one size fits all, but it is pretty universal in that most people feel these steps as they're going through their healing journey. So I hope you found this helpful, and thanks so much for tuning in.